Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each of the episodes against each other. And today's episode is One Punch Man Season 1, Episode 2, The Lone Cyborg. The episode in a nutshell, a brief reminder of what happened. So this episode begins with Saitama on his balcony watering a cactus, while a mosquito starts to buzz around him that he tries to kill and fails. And behind him in the house, there's a news broadcast on the TV basically warning citizens to stay inside as there is a mosquito outbreak in the cities, and it's a new species of mosquito that the experts don't know much about, so it's advised they, again, stay inside. We then see a criminal outside casually robbing the empty stores because sane people have taken advice to stay indoors. In a world with monsters, if you're advised to stay indoors, you really should. And so he gets swarmed and a husk is left behind. The swarm then flies to basically Mosquito Girl, who is like the controller of the swarm, and the blood that they suck, they then feed to her, which then allows her to become stronger. And this is when Genos arrives at the scene to basically stop Mosquito Girl, who has been leaving a trail of husks behind her. And so their fight ensues. Genos, being a cyborg, has flamethrowers out of his hand and various other weapons that he shoots at the mosquitoes in order to kill the swarms. When she attempts to swarm him, he uses his flamethrowers to burn the small ones, and she uses the small ones as shield to block him. She takes his arm, he takes her legs, and once her legs are gone, she then starts to try to flee, so he chases her. But as she's fleeing, she calls back all of the small mosquitoes who have been in the surrounding forests and towns, basically sucking up as much blood as they can, and all of them come to swarm around her in a gigantic ball to give her the blood that they have taken. This is when Saitama arrives, chasing that one mosquito he couldn't kill with a can of bug spray, and then he notices the gigantic swarm and Genos and casually asks Genos what that wiggly thing is. Genos then advises him to evacuate as, mosquito, like there's a monster here, that the battle's taking place. He's going to use like a large attack. And then he uses a very large amount of flame to destroy the swarm that is surrounding her. But she then reveals that she has upgraded and evolved with all this blood and is now bright red, and she is no longer in need of the little ones because she's become so much stronger now. And she and Genos resume their fight while Saitama, who's completely unharmed, well, his clothes are harmed, he's not, is basically watching the fight. Genos ends up losing pretty badly. He gets, you know, more pieces torn up, his torso cut in half. But he's a cyborg, so he's still able to move, but then he decides the only way he can defeat Mosquito Girl is to self-destruct, but just as he's about to self-destruct, Saitama swats Mosquito Girl, saying that mosquitoes suck, and she, of course, is defeated with not even a punch, but one slap. Genos is impressed by this and asks for Saitama's name, which he gives, and then basically says that he wants to be his disciple, and before he really thinks about it, Saitama says okay, before kind of catching himself, but too late, he then leaves, and presumably the next day, it doesn't really say on screen whether it is or not, but presumably the next day, Genos arrives at Saitama's apartment, and we also get a bit of not yet, sorry. He arrives at Saitama's apartment, And he then gives his backstory, which is that he was a happy-go-lucky 15-year-old living in the country with his not very wealthy family. Happy days until the mad cyborg came and destroyed his village and killed everyone in it, including him almost dying, and he would have died if not for the fact that Dr. Kusuno, his savior, came along, who is also chasing the mad cyborg. And Dr. Kusuno then basically agrees to do body modification on Genos to save his life, turning him into mostly machine, a cyborg as well. And now Genos is 19 and he's been traveling from town to town since then trying to find the mad cyborg, but admits that he had gotten a bit of a big head and really overestimated his own power, thinking the only one who'd be able to stop him would be the mad cyborg, but here he was almost losing to the mosquito girl, and that's why he wants Saitama, who has also now saved his life, to become his master and his teacher so that he can become stronger and defeat the mad cyborg when he does find them. As he's telling his story, he's a bit wordy with it, and Saitama visibly starts to be bored, tapping his finger, shaking his knee. Then it kind of looks like the life is draining out of him and he's becoming a bit thinner. And eventually then he snaps and says 20 words or less. And so Genos sums up real quick his point, which is basically what I said. We then kind of slip away to where Dr. Genis is being reported to that Mosquito Girl was defeated. An image of Saitama less clothing comes up on the screen, and he basically says to invite him to the House of Evolution. So we then return to Saitama's apartment, where suddenly Genos kind of perks up and very dramatically says that there is something fasting coming and beings are approaching the apartment. And that is when the very short-lived Kamakuri decides to break Saitama's ceiling and is defeated in one punch very quickly by a very angry Saitama because he's broken his roof. Very rude. And so Saitama then we switch back to Genos, who says that he'll take care of the two that he sent us outside, but by the time he gets outside, Saitama's already there and he's already slammed Sluggerus and Frogman into the ground head first because they destroyed his roof. Saitama is then pulled underneath the ground by the ground dragon, and the Beast King comes along and basically threatens him and is like, you need to come with us, I'm going to tear your eyes out, I'm super strong, blah blah blah. And Ground Dragon, of course, is confident in Beast King's strength, so he's kind of to the side, saying, don't kill him yet, remember we have to bring him to our boss. Beast King doesn't listen. Saitama then casually just steps out of the dirt, which terrifies Ground Dragon, who immediately starts sweating and is like, oh, we're in trouble. Beast King, however, does not have the same level of instincts and continues to get frustrated when Saitama initially annoys him to get the dirt out of his belt and starts, attacking Saitama with all of his very large attacks, claw attacks. He slices his own team, Sluggerus and Frogman, die at Beast King's hands, or claws, shall we say. And then Saitama just casually does his consecutive normal punches, and Beast King is splatted onto the wall of the building. Ground Dragon is now very terrified, realizes the mistake he's made, tries to retreat underground, but Saitama finds him, and he is dispatched from life very quickly. While this has been happening, Genos on the other side has been fighting the armored gorilla, who has been speaking in a robotic type voice, and Genos even starts to think that he might be a cyborg. And they're fighting off screen, and by the time Saitama's done with his battles and he comes over, the armored gorilla's helmet's been removed and he's on the ground, and he's still talking in his robotic voice trying to act cool, saying that that he's number 3, but number 2 is Beast King. They won't be able to defeat him, but then Saitama holds up Beast King's eyeball, and Armored Gorilla loses his accent, freaking out and promising to tell them everything. This is when we go to the credits. And then post-credits, we see Dr. Genis arriving while a bunch of people in lab coats are panicking that the entire hit team they'd sent out has been defeated. And when all of the lab coats turn around when Dr. Genis inquires what's happening, we realize that they all look like Dr. Genis. We'll now move on to our rankings, and as always, we'll rank on 2 lists, the mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So now we come to our mostly objective rank values. And the first rank values belong to the single episode supporting character introductions. And the first, of course, is Mosquito Girl, who is worth 1 point. We then have, now, Kamakuri was on screen for like 30 seconds. He broke the roof and then was immediately dispatched. I'm not giving him points, but I'm noting that he was a single episode supporting character. Then we have Sluggerus and Frogman, and similarly, they were standing outside. They had 1 or 2 lines, but they were promptly defeated by Saitama and then sliced apart by the Beast King, so I'm not giving them points either. However, Beast King and Ground Dragon did have more of a significant role in the fight with Saitama and more lines, and so they are each getting 1 point. We then have our multi-episode supporting character introductions, where we meet Dr. Genis, who is the one who had sent that attack team, and then Armored Gorilla, who was fighting Genos, and is therefore the only survivor of this attack team that has been sent to fetch Saitama, who Dr. Genos wants to see, or Genos wants to see. We then have our multi-season main character introduction, which is the introduction of Genos the cyborg, and we learn his backstory. 19-year-old cyborg became a cyborg at 15. We then get some multi-season main character development while we basically learn that Saitama now has a disciple, congratulations, and that he was 22 years old when his training began and is now, in the present of the series, 25 and bald, which Genos does make a point to note that he's bald so young. And then we have our multi-season main character growth, which is where Saitama reveals a new attack, his consecutive normal punches. And then lastly, we also have yet another 4 points for the world building, which is the revelation that there is an organization that has been experimenting and cloning, apparently, which is the House of Evolution. And that's introduced in this episode as well, which brings us to 23 positive points. And while I have taken 2 points for negative messaging or behavior, which is, of course, the fact that they decided to damage Saitama's home and, property damage, bad thing to do, that literally makes absolutely no difference to the score at all. And obviously, this is a 10 out of 10 episode. Which brings us again to our season 1 rankings so far. And when more than one episode has the same score, on our mostly objective ranking, they will always be ranked in episode order. And that means that in first place is still The Strongest Man, and second place is taken by The Lone Cyborg. We now come to the personal ranking. Now, this one I feel like is almost like an extension of the last episode as well, where last episode we were introduced to Saitama. This episode we're being introduced to Genos, who is basically the second main character, as well as setting up for the next episode as the House of Evolution was introduced, but has not yet been dealt with. So we're bringing in that side of things. Obviously, as similar to Saitama's introduction, there were a lot of small fry villains that were kind of defeated in succession to show, you know, battles in order to introduce the fighting skills and powers of Genos. And also, they destroyed Saitama's roof, so of course he's going to be upset about this. So while it was still interesting, again, it was similar to the last one where, it served a specific purpose, and that purpose wasn't necessarily entirely, sorry, entirely distracted. Give me a moment. Okay, so it wasn't entirely, there was something weird on my microphone. So back to my thought. The purpose was to introduce the characters. It achieved that. I did feel like this one had a little bit less of the comedic value than the last one, though it did still have some comedic moments. For example, Saitama being unable to defeat a mosquito and ironically kind of having his most fearsome fight that lasted the longest with a mosquito instead of all the monsters. All the monsters they can defeat with one punch. A mosquito, he has no hope. Even to the point where he's like still chasing it, like it actually leaves his apartment and he's chasing it down the street with a bunch of bug spray, trying to spray it, and it's still surviving. And this isn't even a cockroach, it's this mosquito. Mosquitoes are easy to kill. You squash them, so at least I've killed many, many, many mosquitoes in my life. They're not that difficult. So it was funny that he struggled so hard with this one mosquito. One of the premises of the show basically is that Genos, machine, drawn to be like a good looking face, nice hair, powerful with all of his guns and weaponry, and you would think, he should be like this amazing hero, and he'll typically have like this long drawn out spectacular battle, the kind Saitama dreams of. But then in the end, once he's defeated, Saitama will basically come along and in one punch dispatch the enemy, never getting to have his like dreamed of fights. So Genos' role is basically to have the fight Saitama dreams of, be defeated, and then Saitama winning. Which is kind of shown here as well with Mosquito Girl. And then the House of Evolution, they don't even consider that they want to find Genos. The one that they're after is Saitama because he's the one who managed to defeat Mosquito Girl so easily. And then there was a bit of comedy with, like Sluggerus and Frogman and their conversation with each other. But again, it was so brief that that doesn't really qualify that much. And Saitama, when he was in the ground, did make commentary about how comfortable it was. It keeps him cool, but it's also warm and cozy. And he asks, like, the Beast King and Ground Dragon to, go away, leave me here to relax. But when they don't, then he just casually strolls out of the ground, which also is kind of funny given Ground Dragon's response to that. But ultimately, I'm giving it the same ranking as I did the first episode because I feel, like I said, like it's an extension, it's an introduction for Genos. 8 out of 10 seems fair, but I'm ranking it below The Strongest Man because it had less comedic value, which I have just revealed is our list so far. First, Strongest Man, second, The Lone Cyborg, both scoring 8 out of 10. Bringing us to the series rankings so far, where we're going to be ranking each of the seasons against each other. And on our mostly objective ranking, we're now up to 20 out of 120. And then on the personal side, we're at 16 out of 120. With that, we have now rewatched and ranked One Piece. Oh, sorry. One Punch Man, Season 1, Episode 2, The Lone Cyborg. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.